to Cafe Classroom News. I'm your anchor, Fedjin Lewis.
And I'm your anchor, Anatole Saracen.
Tonight, we look at a critical issue at the intersection of psychology and law enforcement, how stereotype threat may influence citizens' experiences during police encounters. Our report is based on research by Cynthia J. Nadowski, Petty L. Bottoms, and Philip Atiba Goff.
Before we begin, let's clarify and review a few key terms. 1. Stereotype threat. The fear of confirming a negative stereotype about your group. Number 2. Implicit bias. Unconscious attitudes that affect decisions. And number 3. Police encounter. Any interaction between civilians and law enforcement. These concepts are important because they can change how people think, behave, and interpret each other in these kinds of situations.
The authors explore why racial disparities occur in police encounters. They argue that beyond systematic issues, psychological stress, specifically stereotype threat, may influence behavior. In their study, participants were placed in simulated police interactions where stereotype threat was either heightened or reduced. They measured anxiety levels, behavior responses, and perceptions of the interaction. The study found that individuals experiencing stereotype threat reported higher anxiety, behaved more nervously, were more likely to be perceived as suspicious. The researchers concluded that stereotype threat may create a cycle of misunderstanding, where anxiety influences behavior and behavior influences how police may respond.
To expand on this idea, we look at additional research by Philip Atspagov and colleagues on racial bias in policing. This research examines how perceptions of threat are influenced by race. Participants were asked to evaluate faces or behaviors under controlled conditions to measure bias. The findings showed that Black individuals were more likely to be perceived as threatening, even in neutral situations. This supports the idea that both perception and psychological stress interact, shaping police encounters.
However, not all researchers agree with this interpretation. An opposing perspective comes from Emma Pearson in her study, a large-scale analysis of racial disparities in police stops across the United States. This study examines millions of real-world police stops across the U.S. They analyzed large data sets of traffic stops and searches. They found racial disparities but linked them to location, policing patterns, and officer decision-making. The authors argue that external measurable factors, not internal psychological states, best explains these decisions.
So which explanation is more accurate? Is it internal psychological stress, as suggested by Nadowski and colleagues, or external systemic pattern, as suggested by Pearson's research? This brings us to an important question for our community. Are police encounters shaped more by psychological experiences like fear and stereotype threat, or by external factors like environment and behavior? We now go live to our field reporter to hear what people are thinking.
Charlie, Sergeant Sandlin. First, how do you think people feel during a police encounter?
Well, in terms of how a normal civilian would feel, most people would probably feel nervous, being of how most police stops happen, or just seeing what they've seen online.
Very true.
I'm sure most people get intimidated, get concerned. I think that usually we have a lot of us have a guilty conscience underneath us.
I would say the general first emotion would probably be either like fear or stress of some kind, like there's always like this immediate like, what did I do? Or, oh God, he saw me do that.
Very true.
Oh, that's a lot of different emotions there. Some people have fear of being stopped by the police. Some folks are indifferent about it. So this is a wide gamut of feelings folks feel. But a lot of folks have some apprehension about being stopped by the police, especially if it's a traffic stop, because more folks don't want a traffic citation or traffic ticket.
Do you think stress or fear can affect how someone behaves in that situation?
Yes. Most people, like how if they were to get nervous, how some people would shake, or some people would put their hand on the dashboard, just basing to see what would happen.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you start to second guess yourself, trip over your words. Yeah.
Absolutely. And a lot of the time I also feel like police can use that stress or fear. Like it's like most people probably should know that they have a Fifth Amendment right not to answer police questions, but at the same time it can be very hard to tell a police officer, I don't want to be answering questions right now, when they're like asking these incredibly stressful questions trying to get you to rat yourself out.
Yes, stress and fear affects my emotions, reacting in this situation, yes, especially in encounter with a law enforcement officer, yes, that does happen.
Do you think fear of being stereotyped could change someone's behavior?
Yes.
Yes.
More than likely, especially like minorities that are like proven to often be targeted by police.
Yes, if they have a preconceived notion that the officers or the encounter have been done because of racial motive, yes.
In what way?
Well, when you're young and you see other people, what they've gone through, like your parents or something, when you get older, it can cause you not to like certain people in authority. Just growing up or seeing what's happened around you in your society.
Well, you can either, if it's happened multiple times, you probably can get pretty angry, and so that might, you just get sensitive to it, and so therefore you probably wouldn't be too patient, or you go the opposite direction, then you get really fearful, worried that a stereotype is upon you, so then you just get very reticent, and then you get nervous.
Should police be trained to recognize anxiety in civilians?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. What I've learned is that most police officers, they'll have anxiety themselves, so they'll question every little thing, and that's understandable. But when it's certain things, it can also cause big accidents to occur. So seeing normal signs like that, realizing normal signs, if anything, they should tell the person to calm down, like it's okay, and just go from it out there.
They recognize anxiety. I never thought about that question. I think police should be able to, which they are, be aware of how folks are reacting to the encounter and how emotional they may be during the encounter. But to train to recognize anxiety, that's maybe a little bit too much there.
Why?
Because folks have anxiety over everything, so that would require a lot of, even psychologists, which is a PhD, be trained there. I don't think we can. That would require a lot of training on the PhD level to be able to recognize everybody anxiety towards being stopped by the police.
Okay. How do you think that would impact the community?
I think it depends on really what we're talking about by like detecting anxiety. Like are we talking like detecting anxiety to like pull back when they notice they're getting anxious, or to like use that to get answers in something like an interrogation room?
I'd say use it, anxiety, to truly assess the situation, the severity, to see, oh, should I jump the gun, or this is a safe thing, we're communicating, it doesn't need anything special.
Then I could honestly see it going both ways, because with that first one, like, should I jump the gun? It's like, if somebody's clearly being anxious trying to hide something, then an officer would probably use that. And at the same time, if it's not something major, then it would be useful for, a police officer to be able to tell that somebody's anxious, to really start pulling back and get them to a place where they can be calmer.
Well, I think you have to acknowledge that there is historic tension between law enforcement and various populations, and if you can have a train, you can't just train people to be a hammer. You have to also, because 90% of the time you can talk down folks and you can figure it out through powerful communication. So I think both sides win if there are, as part of the training has to deal with de-escalation and communication. I think we get to the same goal that's need to happen.
Thank you. We're here at Pizza Pasta, and to get more perspectives from the community. What's your name?
Brandon.
Okay, I'm here with Brandon. So Brandon, do you think police encounters are more about behavior or perception?
I think it's a bit of both. I think most police go off of perception, but sometimes they also go off of behavior. I feel like the way people behave, they react on that.
And what do you think causes misunderstanding between police and civilians?
Civilians trying to act like they know a lot, and most of the time they really don't. They try to like pretend like they know the law, or they act like they're also above the law. I feel like that ends up like an ego thing between police and civilians.
Okay. And should psychological factors be considered when looking into these situations?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Because I feel like if they don't, they're missing out a big factor of what the problem is between cops and people that are just out on the street. So, I don't know, I feel like that should be involved.
Clearly, opinions vary, but many agree that both behavior and perception play a role. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Emily.
Today's research shows that police encounters may be influenced by both psychological experiences and external factors.
While some studies emphasize stereotype threats, others show structural patterns and behavior.
As this debate continues, one thing is clear. Understanding both perspectives is important to improving interactions and outcomes.
I'm Pigeon Lewis.
And I'm Anatile Saracen.
And this has been CCN News. Thank you.